We all covet analog gear, and we all wish really that we could have an analog console in our home studios. People like Andrew Masters wouldn't have a channel unless we were all constantly salivating about the gear that we don't have. And I know personally I've always wanted a console in my home studio just like this one. And I've just finally finished setting this console up, and it's probably one you've never ever heard of before. And it cost me only $1,200. That's right, $1,200. And I'll tell you exactly how that happened, but we have to go a little bit further back to explain how I got here in the first place. So once upon a time, young Mitch here used to work as a live in-house audio technician. I worked doing live sound for bands, and that was my week in, week out gig where I worked at a venue in Sydney and going on tour up and down the east coast of Australia and getting to do all kinds of awesome, crazy stuff. And whilst touring and working for bands, I often found myself working on a very particular console that would be in most mid-sized venues, and that was the Allen and Heath GL series consoles. They were awesome. They were super fun to work on. I really enjoyed the sound of them, and the preamps that they had were very high quality compared to some other cheaper consoles at the time. And I remember specifically when the venue I worked at back in Sydney actually upgraded to one of these consoles. It was like the whole venue got a makeover, and everything sounded better from then on when I was mixing through it. There was a noticeable difference between the cheaper console that we had in there previously versus this Allen and Heath console. So that's to say that I developed a particular love and a feel for these Allen and Heath consoles that I'd worked on for many years. Now cut to this year, I'm teaching here in Newcastle, where I now live, and we get a bunch of new live consoles to work on with our students. There's some new Allen and Heath Z series consoles, and we start mixing on them, and I immediately fall back in love with the feeling of these particular desks, and it just reminded me of how much I really liked working on those consoles back in the day. And yeah, maybe it's a bit of nostalgia, I don't know, but I just started digging into whether these consoles were still available. So I jumped on Facebook Marketplace and eBay and stuff like that and scrolled through, and lo and behold, lots of people are selling these Allen and Heath mixers. So I toyed with the idea of getting a GL series console secondhand off Marketplace and putting it in my studio and using it as my analog front end combined with my 500 series gear and all the other outboard gear that I have here now. And as I'm scrolling through Facebook Marketplace, I come across something I'd never seen before from Allen and Heath. It had 24 mic pre's with full parametric EQ sections and a full studio quality meter bridge and master section with groups and inserts and 6 auxiliary sends and a bunch of headphone sends and a bunch of I/O options that actually allowed it to be a kind of digital analog hybrid console. And it just kind of blew my mind. And on top of that, the owner was selling it for only $1,200. And this just seemed too good to be true. So I messaged the seller and immediately got in my car and raced down to Sydney where they were selling it before anyone else could beat me to the punch and snap this bargain up. And when I was driving down to Sydney, I just couldn't stop thinking about what a bargain this was. And I'm sure all of you have had this feeling before. I was like, is this a scam? And I was like, how can they be selling this console so cheap? And when I arrived to pick the console up, I realized it was a radio station selling this console. And not just any radio station. It was a particular radio station in Sydney that is linked to a church, and they have a lot of amazing broadcast equipment, and they had upgraded drastically their setup in this broadcast facility. It looked like walking onto some kind of sci-fi set. The amount of amazing new age broadcast equipment that they had was top of the line, and this poor little console right here was just relegated to the corner and just pushed aside. And whilst they were no longer interested in this thing, and they literally said, we just want to get rid of it. I was like, please give me that console. I just wanted to take it off their hands and appreciate it and give it the love and attention that this thing deserves, because it's actually an amazing piece of gear. So anyway, look, one person's trash is another person's treasure, I guess. So anyway, I get back home, I have the console, I load it into the studio here, and I set it down and I'm just marveling at it. And I have a look at the faders on this console and I'm like, these look peculiar. I look over to the master section of this console and I realize there's a little M there. And basically what this means is that this is actually not just the Allen and Heath console I bought, but it is actually the one with motorized faders. So not only did I get this console for an absolute bargain, but it's the one that comes with motorized faders. So essentially this is a hybrid analog console that also works like a 24 channel control surface. If you think of controllers like the ones from PreSonus that I actually have, or other control surfaces like the new SSL UF8 or any of those, this is a 24 channel version of one of those fully motorized faders right here. It's pretty incredible. So for $1,200, what did I get? I got this hybrid console, I got a control surface, and I got something that can supply artists with true analog headphone sends. And for $1,200, I feel like that is such an amazing bargain. Now, to be fair, this might have cost me $1,200. And to get it working, I did have to go out and buy other bits of equipment to make all of this work. Things like a brand new interface with 32 ins and outs is needed to make this console work the way it's supposed to, or at least the way I want it to work. I needed more patch bays for ins and outs from my mic sends into the console, out of the console, and all of that sort of stuff, and then also in and out of the new interface that I had to buy. And then I also needed to go out and buy more cabling, because every single in and out of this console, in and out of the interface, and in and out of my 500 series gear, which is much further away now, I basically needed to get a whole bunch of new cabling to make all of this work. And the cost of cabling actually sneaks up on you a little bit. Now, off the top of my head, I got my new interface secondhand off Marketplace. Once again, a bit of a steal, $900 for the Quantum 4848. If anyone's interested in that particular piece of gear, hit me up in the comment sections down below. I'll let you know about that one, because that's a whole other story. The patch bays I got secondhand off Marketplace as well for about $80 each. All the cabling maybe cost me about another $500-$600. So all in all, I'm probably looking at another $2,000 just to get the console working, enough patch bay in and outs, and all the cabling to go along with it. So all in all, I'm probably looking at about $3,000 to $3,500 to really make this console thing happen. Now, if you tuned into this video and were like, $1,200, what a steal, and then are now dubious because you're like, oh, actually it cost him $3,500 or $3,000 to make it work. What you should know is this console here, the Allen and Heath GS-R series, can work as its own interface if you want it to. It actually comes with a special card that can be Firewire or analog, and I've got the analog card, but I also have the Firewire card, and I could use the Firewire card with an older PC, and this desk would work completely on its own as its own interface, which is kind of incredible. And it's amazing that these desks kind of never took off, because they sound amazing. They offer 32 ins and outs. There is not an interface with that much I/O for that cheap, let alone a fully functioning console. And now, obviously, there's a bit of sad news as well. This console has been discontinued. However, they do come up on Marketplace and eBay from time to time. So if you're interested in these consoles, 3 of them actually just showed up in the UK. So if you're in that area, you might want to have a look at these. There's one selling in Australia right now that I've seen on Marketplace. And, you know, from time to time they pop up. So maybe keep an eye open for them. And That's not to even say that you actually have to have this particular console. There are many cheap and affordable analog consoles now going for sale on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, because people simply don't want them or are downsizing or are moving to all in the box. So there's kind of never been a better time than now to move into analog whilst lots of people are moving out of it, because people are desperate to sell their old analog gear. They're all in the box, and I'm someone that's passionate about analog, so I'm going to snap all of that shit up myself as well. So if you're into analog gear, there's probably no better time than now to start looking at purchasing some of the stuff that you are interested in, particularly a console or outboard gear or any of that great analog stuff that's out there. But anyway, that's just the story of how I ended up with a brand new console in my studio. I've got lots more content coming your way. I've got some mic build stuff and a bunch of other things happening. So if you're loving the DIY content on this channel, stay tuned. I've got a lot more of that really soon. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you've got any questions about this console or any of the other gear that I talk about on this channel, please hit me up in the comment sections down below. I'm Mitch from the DIYRecordingstudio.com. I'll catch you soon.